Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Money Cure. I am your host, Sean Robert Grant. Hope you are absolutely fantastic today. Hope you are feeling rich, wealthy, prosperous, and filled with joy all at the same time as it relates to your life. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's exciting stuff, man. Money is exciting stuff. It is really exciting. I love the opportunity to podcast and get the chance to talk to you about it. It's amazing. It's amazing. And if you don't feel that way, it's my objective, my love actually, to ensure that you can turn that around. Because if you're going to live the life that you desire, if you're going to live the life that you truly desire, you need to experience the wealth and the riches that are due to you. Okay? So, with that being said, let's get right into today's topic. We're supposed to be rich and wealthy. We're supposed to be rich and wealthy. All right? So, what does that mean? That means if you're not experiencing some form of riches and wealth, if you're not in a place to where you have your time, to where you have an excess amount of money, where you have money working for you, you have been misled. All right? You have been misled. And this is sometimes hard to come to terms with or overcome. But the truth of the matter is, by divine principle, you are supposed to prosper. You are supposed to have an abundant life, not just in your finances, but in every single area of your life. That is a principle, as a divine principle, a divinely creative principle as a human being, that you are supposed to prosper. So what steps in the way of that prosperity? Because if we are all God, and we are God, God lives inside of us. I am God and God is me is a phrase I like to use. And God owns it all. God is supremely wealthy, infinitely wealthy. If we're created in that same image, that means that we have to exude that same type of wealth energy from within. But, once again, you have been misled to think that you're supposed to struggle. You have been misled to think that you're supposed to have a hard time to pay your bills. You are misled to think that you have to work at a job in order to make ends meet, in order to provide for your family. It's all bullshit. Complete bullshit. Because here's the truth of the matter. There have been people over the ages that have been so concerned and worried about individuals, and basically low-income individuals, getting their hands on mind science, on mind power that could help them live an extremely amazing, prosperous life. These people have hidden this wisdom, have done their best to make sure that the masses do not get a hold of it. But you know what? Truth of the matter is, you can get a hold of it just by meditating and praying and talking with yourself and basically indulging in self-discovery. You can attain this wisdom. Because that's how I've done it. You know, I was a Christian for so many years, and this is nothing against Christians, but Christianity has the tendency to lead you down a path that brings you, or I'm speaking from my own experience. It brought me heartache. It brought me disgust. It brought me a feeling of not enoughness. And I begin to ask myself, if I'm doing all these things right, then why do I feel so crummy? If I'm doing all these things like God wants me to do, why do I feel like complete shit? And that was the truth. Not all the time, but around the time that I decided to shake free of it. I just couldn't get over. I thought I should feel more joyful. I should feel more prosperous. I should not struggle if I'm doing everything that God desires me to do. But the truth of the matter is it was the exact opposite. And see, you always have to pay attention to how you're feeling, because your feeling will let you know if you're on the right path or if you're on the wrong path, right? And that was the wrong path for me, and that's how I was able to get away from it and move towards more of a spiritual, love-based oneness relationship with God, understanding that we both are one and we're not separated by any means. When I decided to do that, that's when the happiness and the joy returned. That's when the wisdom started to flow into my consciousness to help me to build, to find the wife that I wanted, help me to find work that made me excited, help me to build the income and the wealth that allowed me to travel all over the world and do things that I love doing and create and to have the time. It wasn't until that relationship became priority in my life that I was able to do that. And that in itself ensured that I was supposed to be rich and wealthy. And I'm telling you the same thing. Wherever you are today, especially if you're stuck in some job, jobs are not meant. They're meant to be stepping stones. They're not meant to make you rich. They're not meant to make you financially independent. Jobs are stepping stones because they're meant to give you skills that will help you to utilize those skills in creating more disposable income for yourself, right? So, by knowing that, every time I would go into a job, I knew there was an expiration date on it. I just knew it. I just could not see myself ever being in a job forever. Now, there was one job that I thought I would, but that was before I actually started to evolve into who I am today. But the truth of the matter is you change. And I started to change. You know what's interesting is I started to get bored at every job I had after, I would say, between 3 and 6 months. I would get bored. And when you get bored, you start to do stuff that's not really coinciding with what you're supposed to be doing, and you start watching the clock and you start thinking about all the other things you could be doing with your time. That's when you need to leave. That's when you need to say, you know what, guys, this has been great, but it's time for me to hang it up. So all I'm saying is, don't feel like you have to be a slave. Don't feel like you have to struggle. Don't ever feel like you have to be less than anybody, because the people that are wealthy now, are the ones that decided to capture within their subconscious the idea that they're supposed to be rich and wealthy. You have been embodied divinely with gifts that were created within you, particularly to help the world, to enrich the lives of others. See, the key word there is enrich. When you enrich others, you become rich, right? It's not a case of chasing cash, but using what you have to enrich others. That's the whole point of this podcast that I'm doing now, is because I want to enrich your life by helping you to understand the consciousness of money and what it takes to create so much of it, that you don't worry about it. You're not concerned when you go to circulate money to get something that you really need. But the difference between you and a Bill Gates or a Warren Buffett or a Bill Johnson, the only difference is they realize that I am supposed to have wealth. I am supposed to have lots and lots of money to change the world. I'm going to use my gifts. And as I use my gifts, I want you to, if you don't hear anything else from this podcast, take this. As I use my divine gifts, I will prosper automatically. As I use my divinely creative, inspired gifts, I will prosper automatically. There's no question whatsoever that when you use the gifts you've been given, and that's why it's so important to find what you're really good at, but more importantly, what you really love. When you find that, oh boy, look out. Look out, because you are on point. And a perfect example is you look at athletes, you look at these kid prodigies. I mean, these babies come out of the womb and like 2-3 years later, they're playing like Beethoven or Mozart. And they just follow that. They follow that. That like it's what they're meant to do. Their gift is meant to enrich the world. They follow that and they become so enormously wealthy because they've taken their gift and they've offered it to the world and they love it and they continue to do it and it's all they want to do. That is how you prosper automatically, right? Find it, whatever it is. Look back on your childhood. See what you were good at. See what you were good at and what you loved. For me, it was always about performance. For me, it was always about, making people feel better, making people feel greater. Even as a little kid, I would have like $3 on me and I would see a homeless man and I would give the homeless man like $2.50. And I know this made my mom so proud, but when I look back on it, what it showed me is that I am a giver. So what do I use my social media and this outlet for? To give. I give. My purpose, my gift is giving. And giving through love. And by doing that, here's the really cool part. Marianne Williamson talks about the law of divine compensation, which means that you focus on your gifts and you give so much of it, you give so lovingly, you give without an expectation of anything back, that God, the divine, the universe, chooses to offer you an enormous amount of wealth from another channel, right? So let's say, I'll give you an example. I think I did over 200 podcasts last year, not to mention all the articles I wrote, not to mention all the videos that I shot, not to mention all the just anything that I was giving to the world through my gifts to post. And I did this without expectation of having anything in return. I just did it because I loved it. I did it because I loved it. And would you know that from doing that alone, another channel came through to offer me 6 figures. Okay? And I say this not to brag, but I say this to let you know that when you give ceaselessly, and you give with a good heart, and you give with love, and you give of who you are, that's the type of stuff that will happen and happen over and over again in your life. And you never have to worry about money, because this instance right here proves that you are supposed to be rich and wealthy. It's what it comes down to, guys. It's what it comes down to. Dive in. Doesn't matter if you don't have a business plan today. Dive in. Start doing stuff. Start enriching the world with your treasure. And that will activate your wealth. That will activate your riches, which first start within as an awareness, and then as the inner mind and the inner subconscious begin, with the subconscious period, begins to grasp it, then it manifests outside of us. It's just that simple. Find your gifts, harvest them, cultivate them, offer them to the world. I promise you, you will never worry about money if you make that a point to do that for the rest of your life. Thank you so much for joining me. It has been an absolute pleasure. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.